When I heard that Peres was dead, I thought of blood and fire and slaughter. I saw the results. Babies torn apart, shrieking refugees, smoldering bodies. There was a place called Kana, and most of the 106 bodies, half of them children, now lie beneath the UN camp where they were torn to pieces by Israeli shells in 1996. This is, of course, happened in that famous Grapes of Wrath Operation 96. Peres was then accused by international media that he was trying to reinforce his image as a stronger military person, so he would do better in the elections.
Shortly after the assassination also, I mean, it was a short while after the assassination of Rabin. I want us to go live now straight to London, apropos that Robert Fisk, which, you know, one can argue when is the time to do things like that, but more to the point, Jonathan Sacerdoti, I-24 News, London, UK-based correspondent, joining us live this morning. Jonathan, as we just mentioned here, not much coverage of Peres on the front pages of the British newspapers. Why do you think that is the case?
I think no coverage on the front pages, actually. I think it's a mixture of two things. One is the timing. Peres died just too late for yesterday's front pages, and by this morning's front pages, maybe it seemed like old news to the British press. But more importantly, I think this isn't the most important thing in the British news agenda today. And while Peres did enjoy that high profile around the world that we've been talking about all morning, in the UK, he wasn't necessarily as popular a figure in recent years, just because there was very little involvement with the UK.
Jonathan, I'm going to have to stop you. We'll be back to you because the ceremony at the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, of laying the wreath next to the coffin of former President and Prime Minister Shimon Peres is beginning. We're looking at live pictures right now from Jerusalem, Israel. The Knesset, the Israeli parliament, there is the coffin of Israeli President, Israeli Prime Minister, one of the founding fathers, one of the founding sons of the country of Israel, a country that doesn't really remember itself without Shimon Peres being laid in state. And of course, hearing the Shema Israel, which is the prayer one sings when a Jewish man passes away. The pallbearers of the coffin of President and Prime Minister Shimon Peres are all part of the general staff, receiving really the highest honors, as should be the case for a former president, a former prime minister, as his coffin is being laid in state. The last time that we saw that Ami coffin, I believe, was with Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin.
That's right, yeah. It looks like there are already quite a lot of people from the public that are trying to line up and see this as well. By the way, they come to the Knesset and start to pass by the coffin.
Pass by. And makes one wonder, you see, this is Jerusalem, of course, this morning. It will not just be today the upper echelon of the Israeli administration and government, but also civilian citizens can come, pass by, show their respects. And this is the beginning, as we said, of the wreath-laying ceremony next to the coffin of former Israeli President and Prime Minister Shimon Peres. Truly the highest honor that can be given to a statesman, to a politician in Israel. We are awaiting the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This ceremony will begin with, of course, the administration of Israel showing its respect to former President and Prime Minister Shimon Peres. Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to come to pass by that coffin and lay the wreath. And of course, we are going to bring you the pictures, the voices, the emotions, and the memory of Shimon Peres live throughout the next 2 days as his coffin lies in state, leading up to his funeral Friday morning, a mass international funeral where so many leaders, from the U.S. President Barack Obama through the leaders of Europe, will be arriving and attending.
You're talking about 80 different delegations from 80 countries.
80 different delegations. Now back to Jonathan Sacerdoti as we are awaiting the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to pass by that coffin. Jonathan, we began to say, looking at that coverage in Britain, as you said, nothing on the front pages, but not just, you know, not intentional necessarily, but the closing of the papers. In England, though, controversial figure Shimon Peres, controversial when it comes to public opinion or administration opinion at all. We saw that Robert Fisk opinion column that Ami Kaufman read out.
Well, Robert Fisk can always be relied on for a hypercritical view on Israel. I think readers
and that's
of
a
The
mild
Independent and
understatement.
other papers know that,
Yes.
which is not to say that what he writes is necessarily invalid. It's just simply the case that one knows when reading the papers that different people come from different perspectives. Similarly, other newspapers have paid tribute, if not on the front page. The Times had a very fulsome two-page obituary today, which was more balanced, let's say, on the pluses and minuses of what was an extremely long life in service to the state of Israel. There is no doubt that no politician gets through that many years of service without some controversy, some good and some bad. And Shimon Peres is held up here in the United Kingdom and across Europe as an example of such a politician, somebody who's taken different positions at different stages of their life and the life of the country they serve, in the case of the state of Israel, and who in his later life really did manage to create this persona of being Mr. Peace from having been Mr. Security. And in a way, that's what's very interesting about his international persona. You'll see today from the United Kingdom, and there for the funeral tomorrow, David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, and also Charles, the Prince of Wales, attending on behalf of the royal family. The reason that Shimon Peres is able in his death to bring out these dignitaries and others from around the world is because of the high esteem that people held him in, because of that Nobel Prize.
Because of that,
fact that he managed to create.
Continue.
Sorry, that he managed to create that legend about himself, that he was a man who in the later part of his life did absolutely strive for peace relentlessly. So I think that's a very important part of his international reputation as well.
No, incredibly so, Jonathan. If you don't mind staying with us, because I want to wonder with all my esteemed colleagues this morning, also with you, Mohammed, at the end of the day, actually, I'm going to start with you. Yasser Arafat could have been considered also a very bloody man in his past, behind many attacks on Israeli populated kibbutzes. I'm bringing you back to the 70s, that, civilians died and whatnot. But the criticism, and here's the thing, because, if we're going to say that you can reach peace only by knowing what war means, why didn't we hear that type of criticism towards maybe, why are we hearing that type of criticism from Europe towards Shimon Peres? Is this the time to bring out Kfar Kana?
Look, it depends on who you're asking, of course. If you ask Palestinians, they have a very, I think, a different view of Peres's legacy. And if you want to respect that narrative, if you want to understand, what they've been through and how they see Peres, that maybe that also brings us a little closer to peace when you try to understand the other or the enemy's narrative. And they see Peres as, I think, responsible for a lot of, for the situation today, for specifically if we talk about settlements, they see not only Sharon, but also as the father of the settlements. They see him responsible for things that happen in
Mohammed, I'm asking, what is being said in the Palestinian territories? Forget the leaders, forget the, the people on the street.
He's a controversial figure to the Arab world, to the Palestinian street, but he's someone that even the man on the street is divided about.
Okay. And the ceremony is beginning in Jerusalem at this point. There's the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Of course, he is, and the President, Reuven Rivlin, of course, coming in to show their respects to Shimon Peres. They'll be the first people to lay the wreath next to the coffin of former President and Prime Minister Shimon Peres that will lay in state all throughout the day today for civilians, for dignitaries, for leaders, for anybody who wants to come and show their respect. Bougie Herzog also there on the left. Isaac Herzog, head of the opposition that is what remains of the Labour Party, which was the party, the political party that Shimon Peres was part of its creation, if not the founding father and one of its founding fathers. And there we have it, laying of the wreath by Reuven Rivlin. He is the man who replaced Shimon Peres as president of Israel, a position that is, I think Shimon Peres brought back dignity to that position, one may say, in Israel. Reuven Rivlin paying his respects, his wife right next to him. The presidential position in Israel is one of actually pomp and circumstance. It doesn't have any kind of credence to pass laws, but very highly regarded. Reuven Rivlin, the president of Israel. Official guards. There is the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He and Shimon Peres, foes throughout their political careers, laying the wreath in his respect. Benjamin Netanyahu next to the coffin of Shimon Peres. Political foes through their career. One can say that in 1996, when Shimon Peres lost to Benjamin Netanyahu, was when he gave up on the dream to be Prime Minister of Israel ever again. Speaker of the Knesset, Yoel Edelstein. As for protocol in Israel, this is right by protocol, coming to lay his respect, that is representing the parliament, the Knesset, the parliament of Israel, that was basically the home of Shimon Peres for most of his life, and one believes that he spent more years in service to the country of Israel politically than not in service. Thus begin, of course, the official ceremonies to mark, to commemorate Shimon Peres. There would be Yitzhak Herzog. He is, as we mentioned, the head of the, the head of the Zionist Union, part of the opposition Israel, the Zionist Union, what used to be, or part of it, the Labour Party. That was the political party of Shimon Peres. Yitzhak Herzog also asked to speak throughout his funeral, but as reports in Israel are coming out this morning, according to protocol, the current administration said that he will not be speaking at that funeral tomorrow. That said, here we have, once again, the coffin of Shimon Peres, former president, former prime minister, a man revered throughout the world, and a man that the country of Israel really does not remember itself without. Being respected by the administration, the current president, there is Reuven Rivlin again. Benjamin Netanyahu passing by, not with his wife next to him this time.